Welcome back to the JN Show. I'm your host, Jeff Nethercott. And on this show, we talk about all things real estate because we really want to give you the tools and the information to make informative decisions in the buying and selling process. But also, when you're a homeowner, we want to make sure we continue to give you information that you can use in your everyday life when it comes to your own residential assets or cottages or other properties that use different real estate services. So, today we're going to talk about a topic everybody doesn't want to hear about until they need it. So with that intro, I'm going to introduce Rebecca. She's a broker with BrokerLink, here to talk about things related to your home insurance. So thanks for joining us today, Rebecca. You want to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about what got you into insurance, what you do, and the services I guess you provide at BrokerLink.
For sure, definitely. Well, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. My name is Rebecca. I am an insurance broker with BrokerLink. I've been with the company now for 9 years as of this month. I've been strictly in the sales aspect of everything for the past 6 years. Service everywhere in Ontario. I am locally based out of London. And I also have recently become dual licensed, so can service in Alberta as well from clients that are in Alberta. And honestly, the reason I got into insurance is I was at college and I didn't get into my primary designation and I needed something secure to fall back on. So business was the way and insurance is just where it went.
Great. It's an interesting point you made there about being dual licensed because there's a lot more, I think, interprovincial moves right now, or even on the investor side between Ontario and Alberta. So,
Really.
is that what kind of brought your attention, or?
Yeah, so BrokerLink as a whole, we are across Canada. So we are in all provinces aside from BC and Quebec at this time. And there is a very large demand with insurance needs in Alberta. So it was overflow through the company and also exactly as you just said, based on needs for people making moves and or for investors who live in one province but want to invest in another province. It just makes the process a little bit easier when you can have one person or one company dealing with all of your needs to keep everything in-house.
For sure. And I know we're going to focus on home insurance needs for the most part in this podcast. But what type of insurance do you cover?
So I deal with all personalized insurance, so definitely your properties, so your main primary home, renter's insurance, if you own a building and you rent it out, so rented dwellings, cottages, things of that nature. And then as well, we also deal with vehicle insurance, boats, ATVs, wreck vehicles, all of that. Anything personal is what we deal with. BrokerLink as a whole has commercial and life as well, but I personally with the personal side of things.
Yeah, I think it's a great time of year. I know you're probably coming up to a lot of renewals because people tend to buy houses in the spring, but then you've got the change of season. People are putting their snowmobiles away maybe soon because we're in the middle of the spring thaw starting. So we're hoping the sun's around the corner. Then they get their motorcycles, dirt bikes, boats out.
All that.
So yeah,
Just getting ready, trailers, all of that. Yeah, it's a busy time come spring, but it's good.
yeah. And do you find that this is the time of year when people actually sit down and review things, or they just let renewals go? Or
I mean, that it is the ideal time to take a look at everything when your renewal is coming up, making sure that you have the most accurate coverages as well as that you're getting a great premium for the coverages that you do have. I think sometimes it can unfortunately fall by the wayside. Insurance is just one of those things that isn't at the forefront of everyone's mind, and it's also something that you don't really want to have to worry about and deal with. But it is always a good thing to take a look at and review, if not every year, at least every 2 to 3 years, just to make sure.
yeah, and like I started this off, I said insurance is something people really don't want to talk about until they need it. And so sometimes they just don't take the proper time to educate themselves or talk to a broker. They just do some simple online stuff sometimes or do their Google searches like they do in our industry. So I really like that we're going to dive down into some key tips around home ownership and insurance to give you a little bit more information, but you really should be sitting down with an insurance broker, someone like Rebecca, and getting a full analysis of everything, all your coverages, how they relate, because I'm sure there's a lot of different tools and techniques when it comes to depending on how much you want to pay, what your premiums are going to be based on your needs, and a lot of different factors coming. And I know I try and review mine at least once a year. But yeah, as you this is definitely a time of year when things are changing, and it's a good time to review. So,
hmm
um, home ownership. So, what are when should someone reach out to you to discuss home insurance if they're thinking about purchasing a home or making a move?
For sure. So, I mean, obviously, home insurance is generally part of your mortgage clause, right? You're going to need to have insurance in order to secure your being. So once you're starting your home journey and you're looking at homes, definitely just making some calls to see what the cost is going to be, if there's any further information that the company may require. Sometimes with older properties, there might be aluminum wiring or different type of plumbing that's used, and you just want to make sure that based on the materials in the home, it's going to meet the requirements of the insurance company to make sure that they're okay to insure it, or potentially if there's any other requirements they may need, as such as an ESA or anything like that, just to ensure the accuracy of the builds. So it never hurts to start that process as soon as you have a home in mind. If you're looking to put an offer in on a home, I always recommend just making a couple calls and getting some quotes just to see, just so that way you're aware and can fully prepare yourself. Okay, if my mortgage is this and my insurance is this, it just allows you to budget well as well. And then as well, it gives you information as to the type of coverages that you can have on the home too.
Yeah, when we write up offers, we always include a standard condition where they have the opportunity not only for mortgage and home inspection, but they also have an opportunity to review insurance and get a quote to make sure they're comfortable with it. It's not always the case that someone can include that, but they can at least make that phone call even before they put in an offer. Is there anything that they can find out, like in that process? If someone reached out to you, would you know if there's an issue with that home or that neighborhood or that area that you won't get certain coverage or
Yep, exactly. So, yes and no. It's kind of a two part answer there. So, we would know based on the home itself, again, depending on the materials, if there were to be further information the company would need to insure it. So, if there was high tech plumbing, some may require that it be updated to copper, PVC, whatever that may be, based on their guidelines. Depending on where your home is within a town or city, in a body of water, you may only get certain limits for water coverages. So, knowing where the home is, and it would allow us to know what type of coverages that would be offered, or if there were further requirements the company would need in order to be able to secure the insurance.
okay. Yeah, I had a client run into this recently where house is brand new build, finished basement. They shop around and not one insurance broker would cover basements in that area because it was built new construction within the last couple of years, built in a floodplain. And are you seeing more of that as we go through?
There definitely are certain pockets, not just necessarily within London, but even within southwestern Ontario, where water coverages are becoming a bit of a concern. Windsor specifically is an area where water coverages are often very minimal, if included at all. So it is very dependent on your location and where you are as to what amount of coverage a company would offer for water, if they're going to offer it at all.
Okay, so definitely some things to factor in. 'Cause if someone has a beautiful basement worth $100,000, but you can't get it covered and something happens,
Exactly.
uh,
Exactly. And especially with water, unfortunately, because water can do such an excessive amount of damage in such a minimal amount of time. When it comes to claims related situations, the repairs with that can be quite expensive. So you want to definitely make sure as best you can that you have the most appropriate coverages to protect you in those situations.
okay. Now, when someone's moving, what are some things they should look at in their insurance policy? Like, is there anything with the home insurance that covers that moving process? Like, you're hiring movers, you're bringing in the house, or you're trying to move yourself. Are there things people should really pay attention to?
Definitely something you want to consider. I mean, your property is always covered during a move, so you are protected. That being said, there are certain limits that some companies may have in place. So I would always recommend contacting your insurance provider or your broker beforehand just to make sure that your policy is covering exactly what you need. And if not, then you can have the conversation with your moving company to maybe get some additional insurance from them to make sure that you are fully protected in the event that there were to be a situation.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. You should be working with a reputable insurance carrier, not an insurance company, but mover company that has insurance, number one. Clear number two, liability is probably the bigger part of the coverage you're concerned about with
Yeah,
looking in and doing work or anything like.
exactly. And also too, if so, I mean, your home insurance is going to cover your property for theft, vandalism, that kind of thing. But let's say you have a really expensive statue and the movers accidentally drop it. Well, who's going to cover it? Is it your home insurance or is it the moving company insurance? Those are just some quirks that you would want to work out beforehand, so that way you fully know what to expect in the event of a situation like that.
Yeah, and that's interesting, right? We were interviewing mover not that moving company not that long ago, and they're talking about the unique items they move. But when it comes to your home insurance, you can't just assume that everything's covered. It you have a unique item, it should add its own rider or label in the policy language.
Very, very. Very accurate, absolutely. So, your home insurance, yes, does cover all of your belongings within your home. So, furniture, electronics, decor, all of that stuff. However, if you were to have a particular article that were high value, a statue, a piece of jewelry, a watch or ring, whatever it may be, you definitely want to make sure that it is scheduled. It's a personal floater you would put it on. And so, what that means is that the article is going to be insured to its value. So, based on the appraisal. Whereas if you don't have something like that and you were to have a situation, let's say the watch were to be stolen, the article is only going to be insured with your basic coverage up to $6,000. But if the watch is worth maybe $13,000, you're not out that difference, right? So anything of high value, you definitely want to have the conversation with your broker or your insurance company just to make sure that it is being insured to the accurate value. Again, I mean, hopefully you never have to worry about it, but just to be better safe than sorry.
And when when someone's looking at their move again, are you seeing any common mistakes when people reach out to you when it comes to home insurance?
Not necessarily with the move related situations. There are definitely some misconceptions with home insurance that some people might not figure not figure out beforehand, but you just always want to have these conversations, right? So, I mean, a misconception is, I mean, the main thing I hear is that premiums are expensive. I appreciate a budget. I very much can get on board with that.
Yeah.
However, what is $1,600 over the course of a year versus if you don't have insurance and you have a claim that's going to cost you $70,000? It's perspective, right? So definitely something to consider. And then as well, there are some times where people may assume that they don't need insurance, whether they're renting or if they live in a condo, they may assume that the condo corp's insurance is going to cover them. That's not accurate. You definitely always need your own personal insurance for your own personal belongings because the condo is only going to cover their needs and your insurance is going to cover your needs. So you always just want to make sure that, again, you're having those conversations so that way you are fully protected.
Yeah, and a common mistake I'd assume from my experience, because I've had clients panic last minute, is they don't call their insurance provider until like the day before closing when they're 2 days before and the lawyer's reviewing, oh, we need something to send to your mortgage company. And it's a last minute pressure for you to get the job done.
Yes, yes. Again, unfortunately, I think insurance is one of those things. It just kind of falls to the bottom of the list, especially when you're dealing with a move. You've just purchased a home. There's a lot going on. It's overwhelming, right?
Yeah.
I fully understand. But yes, sometimes leaving it to the last minute because then you could potentially be in a situation where maybe your current company you're insured with won't insure the home to the way you want it to, right? So then you need a bit more time to do some research to say, okay, well, I need to go to this company. I need to make a switch, or what are my coverages looking like? What type of coverages are being offered? So as much as I appreciate it might not be at the forefront, it is something always definitely to consider and not leave till the day of the day before. You definitely want to give yourself at least a week or so to really do that research so you can get all that information done.
Yeah, I've heard people switching to quick online companies that will give them a quick approval, but and then they find out what they upon renewal, or if an issue happens that they didn't get the coverage at all that they wanted because they didn't take the time to do the research and have a conversation with a knowledgeable individual like yourself.
'Cause, yeah, that happens quite often, unfortunately. I mean, those online platforms are great for quick and easy, but again, like you just said, you don't know exactly what you're getting. So you may assume you have proper coverages, but you might not actually. And unfortunately, a lot of the times you don't know that until you're faced with a claim. And then it's at that point the realization hits that, oh my goodness, I thought I had water coverage, but I don't have water coverage. Or I thought I was insured for towing liability, but I'm only a million. So it's just always good to go over those details.
Yeah. Now, I'm assuming this will change between insurance company to insurance company. Like you can place somewhere at multiple companies through your brokerage.
Mhm.
A common thing we run into, especially if someone owns a home and is trying to make their move as simple as possible, is that they may own two properties for a period of time. They couldn't align closing dates or just wanted to make their move easy, but they could have one of those houses sitting empty for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 3 months.
Mhm.
Anything a homeowner should be aware in those situations where they're not actually living in a property.
Definitely. So there is a 30-day grace period between transition from home A to home B that the company will offer you. So if it is sitting vacant or you're slowly moving things from location one to location two, there is coverage. After the 30-day mark, it is a conversation you would definitely want to have with your broker or your insurance company just to see what they're going to require at that time. Sometimes they might allow for a vacancy permit, knowing that the home has been sold and a new person is going to be coming in. They might allow for that. They may decide that it might not be something they want to insure any longer just based on no one living in the home. So you may need to get a short-term temporary insurance with another company that will insure it while it's vacant. So that way you still have the coverage needed. So it's just a matter of having that conversation with your broker to make sure that during that transition, the home is still insured the way that it needs to be.
Yeah. Another thing too is those snowbirds, right? They leave their house for a period of time, and
Yeah.
some of them, unfortunately, walk into a situation where a pipe is burst. They're thinking about selling their house. We go and check it out. They're not local, and then they haven't checked on their home as much as they're supposed to, and they're into a bit of an insurance mess altogether.
Yeah, that is also something you would need to be very mindful of, whether you're a snowbird or even if you're traveling for 2 weeks. Anytime you're out of your home for longer than a 7-day duration, you want to make sure you're taking proper protocol and steps to make sure that you're mitigating any potential factors. So, having someone come check on the home every 2 to 3 days, making sure you've closed the water lines, and just doing your due diligence to try to prevent any situations. I mean, of course, anything could happen at any time, but the more protocol and proactive steps you take to mitigate those factors, the better off you are.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. It's knowing your policy inside out and having a broker. You can make that quick call and see what's going on in it.
Yeah, exactly. Just to be able to have someone that you can ask the questions to, right? I think that's the biggest relief when you're dealing with a broker or anyone. They know your policy for you. So if you don't know, then you can go ahead and ask them the questions and they'll be able to get you all the answers and information that you need for sure.
Okay. Yeah, and we've talked about like house coverage. There's two portions or multiple portions in it, but one of them is liability. I think some people might skimp out on this a little bit to keep their costs down, but do you have a general protocol when it comes to what you're seeing as
Yeah.
liability coverage?
Yeah, so liability is huge. It's very important. I think there's a misconception that you don't really need the liability or you want to reduce it to try to help with the premium. It's very important because what your liability protects you for is if you were to be personally sued. So if someone were to slip and fall on your property or get an allergic reaction or anything, any type of situation, that's your liability right there. Generally standard for me, I quote with 2 million liability. The cost differential is very minimal between 1 million, which is your minimum that you're allowed, and 2 million, and it does just provide you that extra protection in the event of a situation. It's peace of mind. It's less of a headache for you to be worried about.
Yeah, one of those scenarios when you're thinking about selling your home as well, you generally have more traffic coming through, whether it's through open houses or showings,
Definitely.
and we get weather like we've had this winter where a lot of ice and stuff is there. You want to make sure you're protected just in case, right? Like it is your property they are visiting, and you should have proper coverage. And that is something I always discuss with people just to have that conversation.
Yeah.
And then in our agreement of purchase and sale, when an offer comes in, it's another reminder like you need to keep this property insured until the day of closing. This doesn't mean once it's sold and you move out, you can cancel it. The buyer needs to make sure there's coverage if something were to.
Exactly, yeah, and that's a huge thing too. You do wanna make sure that you're carrying the coverage till closing date, because at that point, then the new owner will have their insurance effective, the closing date as well, so it just will transition from yourself to the new owner. It's not once you've moved out of the home, if again, there's a 2 or 3-week delay between move out and move in, that home still needs to be insured, right? So you definitely wanna make sure that you're lining those dates up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the most unique property you've insured?
So I didn't actually end up selling the insurance to the clients, but he was shopping around. He lived out in Uxbridge. He had a 5-acre property. It was beautiful. I Google Maps it. I definitely correct it. It was really nice. But yeah, so he had it was the home was gorgeous. He had a detached structure, which is another thing you always want to make sure that you're insuring properly. If you have a property that has a detached garage or a shop or something, a barn, anything like that, you want to make sure that your insurance is adequate in covering that as well. The way it works is there are certain percentages of your home value that will be allotted to coverages like that. But if you have a barn on your property that's worth 120,000, well, you want to make sure that's insured properly, right? So he had this. He had a shop. It was fully renovated. It was heated. It had a washroom. It had a workout area in it. So it was very nicely done. So it was really cool just to see the different aspects he had to it. And again, I didn't end up insuring it for him. He stuck with his company, but you see a lot of different properties while doing this, so it's really cool to see.
Yeah, we're starting to see things like people with outbuildings buildings, whether they're small garages or shed that have been converted, and they go and stick a $20,000 plus golf simulator in it.
Mhm.
You want to make sure those kinds of things are insured because
Absolutely.
they're
Your home
a
gym,
normal.
anything. Yeah, anything like that. Again, a golf simulator, another one of those things where, yes, it's insured through your coverage for your contents. However, if you have that one item, that one device that's worth 15,000, let's just say, well, you want to make sure that that's insured properly because if not, you're not going to get the full value. Knock on wood, if you were to have a claim situated.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. Are you seeing any particular trends or changes in the insurance world right now at the moment? Whether it's from the insurance type of coverage or changes in coverage, right through to, I guess, maybe even some of the back end process, like is AI changing insurance a bit?
Yeah, AI coming in a lot. I think that's across the board, which is it's a good thing. Honestly, I can't really complain. Not a lot on the property side. I will say on the auto side, a lot of telematics programs that's very beneficial for clients to take advantage of for additional discounts.
Yeah.
I will say with property insurance, again, just ensuring that you're just reviewing it and having the conversations with your broker and making sure your coverages are good. Your liability, keeping your liability again up is beneficial just in a case of those situations for sure.
Okay. Yeah, like with us, like AI is not necessarily about replacing that knowledge exchange from our experience, but it's all that back end stuff to make things easier, right? Like whether
Your
it's
processing.
helping processing the paperwork or matching. I'm sure it's changing that world fast. It's
Yep.
raised most agencies right now.
Exactly. 100%.
But
Yeah.
yeah, and when it one of the other things I was gonna ask you about just slipped my mind, but we'll jump on to another question I had here from someone else. Is there, um, can you tell us the difference? Well, not really the difference, but one thing that we've noticed in the last few years is the cost of construction has increased quite a bit. So the question was like the two different types of coverage, whether it's replacement or um, the kind of cash value of it.
Yep.
But one thing I think that I noticed on at least one of my properties is I felt it was really underinsured at one point because the cost of construction went up. And I quickly looked at it and I know being in the industry what things cost dollar per square foot. I'm like, we got to adjust this.
Yeah.
I think recently they've kind of adjusted that more appropriately, but there was during that peak of COVID
Yeah.
changing.
Yeah. I think that was a large concern with quite a few people. So there are two types of ways that your property can be insured. Majority of the time, it's going to be through guaranteed replacement cost, which means at the time of insurance, you're going to have a predetermined value of your home. Now, this is rebuild cost, not resale. So a little bit of a difference, obviously, because you can appreciate the market, right?
Yeah.
Um, but yes, it was a predetermined cost of your home to rebuild it using same like kind and quality. So let's say, for example, you've purchased a new home, and based on that predetermined value, it's 700,000. That means with the guaranteed replacement cost, no matter what, even if it's 2 years, 5 years, 12 years down the road, you are going to get the guaranteed replacement cost to rebuild your home. So even though it's 700 at the time of starting your insurance, but based on rate of inflation, the cost of increase of material, labor, all of that into consideration, it's going to cost you 820. That difference is automatically covered with your insurance company. So you never have to worry about that as something that you're going to have to expense yourself. When you have a property that's insured for just actual cash value, what that means is based on that predetermined price, that's the limit that you're going to get from the insurance company. There is year over year, generally a 4% inflation that's going to be put onto the value of your home to try to keep up with rate of inflation. But that said, if your 4% is tacked on and now let's say it's 714,000, if you had a claim and you had to rebuild the home, but it cost you 750,000, that difference is now your expense. You have to pay for that out of pocket.
Responsibility.
It is the homeowner's responsibility, yes. Now, again, it is very rare. It's not overly common that you have an actual cash value coverage on your property. It is more so the general replacement cost that you'll have. But it is, again, something to be mindful about and make sure that you are aware of because, knock on wood, again, in the event of a claim, you want to know what you're dealing with, right? Are you going to get the full assistance from the company or do you need to be prepared that you're going to have to put up a bit of money to be able to build your home again?
Okay. Now, are there certain types of property that might be in the cash value category? And I think the property that came up on was it was an older property, I think built in the 1800s, brick, and they were really hesitant on the replacement cost with similar materials because to get like the type of wood trim and all that, they're like, we can't even find that wood. I think there's actually mahogany in it. So that might have been what the trigger was and said, okay, we need to adjust this to make it
Yeah.
as close to the right materials as possible.
Yes, yes. So those would definitely all be factors. Exactly how the home is built, what type of material is used in it, in two ways. In the way that you've just mentioned that based on the materials back in the 1800s, we don't have access to that same quality of material anymore, right? So
The real 2x4, that's
maybe right.
sure.
So how can a company say that they're going to replace it to this with the same like kind and quality? They wouldn't be able to do so, right? So definitely. Again, on the flip side, though, let's just say potentially it's a home again with high tech plumbing. Well, if that's not something the company is 100% in favor of, then they're only going to put it to actual cash value due to the potential increase of a potential claim that they're going to have to worry about. Another situation that could put a home in an actual cash value situation, maybe if the client has had an issue with their insurance history, maybe they defaulted on payment. So now instead of getting that guaranteed replacement, they're going to go to actual cash value for at least a year until the company can confirm that they have a good track record to be able to offer them better coverages.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. Are there any other unique scenarios that people need to do a little bit more research on? Like we're seeing things like metal roofs are way more popular now. Even a lot of solar. It's not as prevalent now, but I imagine it will start coming back because there was a lot of push for it about 10 years ago. Are these like some serious implications that people should be looking at in more detail?
The solar roof aspect of it, definitely a conversation you want to have. A lot of companies have quite a few guidelines when it comes to solar roofs, just to, again, make sure that it meets their guidelines and underwriting rules. So, if you are looking at a property that has solar panels, I definitely recommend having that conversation with your broker sooner than later, just so that way you know for sure it's fully covered and you're going to get, again, the value of everything back, that there's going to be no concerns in regards to a claim. Metal roof, no concerns there. It actually metal roofs are great, right? Like their lifetime, their expectancy, their durability, it's great. Companies prefer metal roofs realistically. So if you have the ability to put a metal roof on or you have a metal roof, again, just make sure you're indicating that to your company. I think a lot of times it may be assumed asphalt shingle is more common. That might be the material that's used. However, you do have a metal roof, just indicate that for sure.
Yeah, it's got a longer life. It's also a longer replacement if some or more expensive replacement if something happens to it, and make sure it's covered properly.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Do you recommend that homeowners document photos of their house and stuff from time to time?
Never a bad idea. I mean, you never want to think about it, but let's say you had a theft situation. If you kind of have a copy of or I don't want to say a running receipt, but if you have some receipts for more expensive things, if you have photos of things so that way you can provide, it's never a bad idea. I mean, the more you have on your hands, the better it is to provide to be able to give to the company. It's not required by any means, however. So if you don't have photos or you don't have a receipt, not to worry. It's not mandatory by any means. It just would be able it's nice to be able to provide that to the company if it's requested, so that way you have it's like a bill of sale for your vehicle, right?
Yeah, or even as you're going through a traumatic process, you want to remember what was in your house as you live. Oh, I forgot about a couch.
Yes,
It's
exactly.
comfy.
Or you don't think about it and it's a month later and you go to look for a specific item. Oh, this camera's gone, or oh, my watch is gone, or whatever it might be, right? You don't There's certain things that you don't use on the daily that might not come to the forefront, exactly like you said, when you're dealing with something as such an invasion of privacy, right? So yeah, it's hard to keep that running list going all the time.
Yeah, for sure. As we wrap up today, is there any key takeaways or tips for homeowners when it comes to home insurance?
Yeah, I mean, again, I would just always encourage that you are having a conversation with your broker, your insurance company, whomever, just to make sure that, again, you have the appropriate coverages that are necessary, making sure that you know your coverages so that way in the event of a claim you kind of have an expectancy as to what's going to happen, and just reviewing it. I mean, again, even if you're not sure, asking your broker to review it for you every year at your renewal, making sure you're getting the best rate with the best coverages. Because if it's not with this company, it can be with another company. And I think a lot of people, or a lot of times people just assume, well, I've been with my company for so long, they're going to be offering me the best rate. That's not always necessarily the case. So just taking a look around and just exploring those options, it doesn't hurt. And then that way you know that you have the best coverages with the best companies.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Rebecca. Like for me, one of the key things to remind people too is don't leave anything when it comes to insurance the last minute and assume. We try to guide people, give them tips throughout the buying process or selling process, and say, one of the people that you should be reaching out to is your insurance broker, making sure everything's fine and lined up for your purchase, sale, and the transition. So yeah, great time to review then. but make it a priority as part of that move. It should be one of the top things there that you're reaching out about. So we really appreciate your time. How does someone reach out to you?
Yeah, great. Absolutely. So I appreciate you having me again. Thank you so much. And again, I'm working with BrokerLink, so you can find me online. Or we do have an Instagram page that you can follow. We're on LinkedIn, so anywhere.
Yeah, hopefully you found some great tips within this podcast. If you have any questions, reach out directly to myself or Rebecca. We'll connect you. She's a great resource, and it never hurts to have a second opinion and review what you have today. So, once again, thank you for your time. If you liked what you saw today, follow or subscribe to our show, The JN Show, and we look forward to providing you more information when it comes to home ownership and giving you the tools to make those great choices and decisions to protect and enjoy your biggest asset.